Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Talking Elite Fitness. Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez and Lauren Khalil. Thanksgiving week. How's everybody doing? Ready to get some food in that bed?
I can't wait.
Thinking about pie.
What? Oh man, I can't. My mom's sweet potato casserole. I can't wait for it.
Yeah,
can't wait.
Man, I'm doing it. I told you this last week. I'm doing a turkey trot.
Oh yeah,
getting up early. I'm going to run a 5K.
That.
I can't either. It used to be my greatest nightmare to have to do a turkey trot on Thanksgiving. Like I said, the one day where I just want to be laying around the house, just stuffed to the gills, blood pressure about 2/1, just watching football, doing nothing. Now I got to run.
It's funny, you know how,
whatever.
I mean, both of you are happily married. I am still single and on the market, but one of my deal breakers is I will not date a man if his family is a family that does turkey trots on Thanksgiving.
Look, if you do it, fine, but if you're going to dress up and go all out and wear on a goofy costume, that's where I'm you cannot be this happy about running this far this early.
I like it. Was that like an advertisement, Lauren? You guys are single. I'm single.
Maybe.
Wink, wink.
Slide into my DMs if you're cute and you don't run
and you don't do the turkey trots. Yeah. It'll be fun though. We're doing it with my son, so it's not like this is going to be a breakneck pay. I'll be fine. I'll be able to keep up. But on today's show, we're going to talk with Dylan Malitsky from Loud and Live Sports. They run Wodapalooza. And we're going to be speaking also with Brent Fikowski from the PFAA. They have the Wodapalooza and PFAA have formed a partnership, an official partnership. Talk to them about what that means. Mm-hmm. And before we do that, though, we want to thank our sponsor for today. That is Momentous. You can use the code ELITE right now for 15% off, but Black Friday is going on.
Yep.
Hey.
So 25% off everything.
Yep.
So go to livemomentous.com. That's the website. And you can just get all kinds of great supplements. I've been using their creatine, their protein. They have a post-workout protein recovery drink. It's
has little carbs in it. I love it.
It's so good, man. And look, we all know there's a lot of BS out there in the supplement world. You can trust Momentous as the premium on the market. All right, here's why. Because Momentous and Dr. Andrew Huberman have collaborated to develop products and protocols designed to optimize mental health, physical health, and performance in all aspects of life. They have 150 plus professional and college teams using their products. They contract with the U.S. military. Momentous has proven itself as an industry leader that creates best-in-class human performance supplements designed by experts, used by the best in performance, and made for all of us. LiveMomentous.com. Black Friday sale going on right now. When that's over, you can still use our code ELITE for 15% off. Their stuff is fantastic. I'm a big fan, and I'm actually running low on the protein. Might have to go to take advantage of that Black Friday.
Yeah, and for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the code will be auto-applied. Yeah. So just go to the website.
Just do it.
Yeah, just go and you'll get it. They also have this is what's super cool because they partner with Andrew Huberman. Everyone knows him. He's one of the big ticket guys within the performance space because of his work at Stanford. And they have a Huberman collection. So some things that he's worked with them on, whether it's Fidosia aggressivis, I think it's called, which is some herbal supplements that have been shown to help testosterone and do a lot of other stuff. But there is some really cool products that they have on there. That they've partnered with some industry leading scientists and people in the field as well.
Fantastic. LiveMomentous.com, and to quote Pat Sherwood, couldn't be simpler. Couldn't be simpler. Slaps you right there on the chest. So LiveMomentous.com, Black Friday sale going on now. And again, after that, when it's all said and done, you can still go back there, use our code ELITE, and you'll save 15%. Before we get to our interview with Dylan Malitsky and Brent Fikowski, let's talk about a couple things that have happened here in the past couple of days. First, the most recent being Dave Castro on his weekly recap. And I want to once again just give him credit for doing these things because I have been a guy who's been beating the drum of you need constant communication. I think Dave's done a fantastic job of getting out there and taking some comments and some questions, dealing with them head on. And I give him a ton of credit for that. More of that, please. Good job, Dave. But he did a bit, the first thing he talked about was all the franchise talk that was out there, that is out there right now. and shot that down pretty directly.
Yep.
As directly as you can.
Yeah, he dealt with that head on. Then he later on, he talked about this Triple Crown thing that he's working on. And this has been a conversation that has been going on for a while.
I mean, we were talking, to be fair, like we were throwing out ideas around this, like integrating off-season.
And by we, you mean like just the games team,
like the games team.
Us,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like back in 2016, 2017.
I remember Justin Berg talking about it.
No, yeah. I specifically, I had a meeting with both Justin Berg and Dave when he was in town, or he was around, because I don't know if he had moved back at the time, but we had talked about what would it look like to start in some capacity integrating off-season competitions, not necessarily to the sport, but at least having a better relationship with them. Because if you remember back at that time, CrossFit was very adamant about none of these off-season events being called CrossFit competitions.
Yeah.
Because of what happened at the OC Throwdown with Kevin Ogar, and they had to be very protective over that, and rightfully so. But there were things like Wodapalooza that were getting huge participatory numbers and starting to really make waves. ECC was one of them. Dubai was starting to get some legs as well. You had the Granite Games. You had a bunch of events that were very popular. And there was talk, and it was a very early seed. It was just like, well, what if we had some sort of reward behind that, as a way to, involve athletes in a way that's more year round. The net out of that at the time was like, maybe that's 5-6 years down the road, but it did allow me to actually go and scout. You remember I went to Wodapalooza for the first time.
That was the genesis of that, right?
On behalf of our team to go and scout athletes. That's how I first got to physically see Tim Paulson compete at a high level where, we predicted him to make the games that year. That's one that stuck out in my mind. And now I think that we're at a spot with the inclusion that it would be great to have a financial and celebratory incentive to do that in a way that's meaningful for some of these big name athletes to get out and could just be out in front of events globally more often.
Yes. So then I do remember that talk happening, and then Dave rekindled it and actually went through what he was thinking. And it was, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I know we were talking about this earlier, but it was, you get to the games, you take your top 20 athletes from the games, they advance to the quote unquote Triple Crown, the games being the first leg of it. Top 20 move on to Rogue. Then after that, you move on to Wodapalooza. You get points based on your placement. So like the Open, lowest score wins. And at the end of that, that's their Triple Crown. The three events that comprise that are the games, Rogue and Wodapalooza.
Yes, and if there's any tie, your placement at the CrossFit Games is the tie break, whoever places better there.
So it's an interesting concept. I think you guys talked about it on Death By that you'll be able to see on Wednesday. And I think Chase made a really good point, and I agree with him. It's like, I don't know if you should include the games in the Triple Crown. I think it should be the starting point, and then I think you should add an international event in there like Dubai, and then I think you really got something.
Stole the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love, and I think early on maybe because obviously you have to go through your iterations of seeing what events actually want to be part of, and there's obviously like relationships behind the scenes that you have to massage there too. I think having the games as the buy-in, right? So that qualifies you, that's the gatekeeper. And then having it also be the tiebreaker is what they're best suited for. And then let the athletes manipulate the offseason as they see fit without necessarily the games being the determining factor of like points. Because I think it would if it's a Triple Crown and you want it to be centric around the offseason, let the offseason be the primary points accumulations.
Yeah.
And maybe having something like Fit Fest in the UK or something like the Down Under CrossFit Down Under Championship in Australia be the events that are the international ones, so you can actually get the top athletes competing in areas outside of their normal time zones, because then it just becomes a US centric. It's like now all three events are just US based.
Yeah. And you'd also, like, if you do top 20, it does kind of eliminate the Rogues qualifier, because they like to qualify 5 through an online thing. They would have to buy in, wouldn't they, and say, okay, yes, we'll let all 20 in, and then there's no online qualification process.
Yeah, or they Are they bumped to 30 maybe?
Who knows? But
yeah.
it's a cool concept for the offseason. I think just to give you a more contiguous storyline throughout multiple events.
For sure. And I think it's a great idea. I think if you can flesh it out and get buy-in across the board. And, this is where I think like and this touches a little bit on what we're going to talk about with the PFAA and Wodapalooza, but if you get all of these organizations together on board to work cohesively, I think that's good for the overall like morale and red tape of the sport. If you can get the athletes behind it and they can provide their input, if they can partner with events and then those events can work with CrossFit as part of this bigger ecosystem, instead of having everything so siloed off, I think there's benefit to just people working together more frequently at a high level. That benefits the sport for sure. And if you look at like the evidence behind having an international event, like you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, that's the wrong year. Oh, I botched that one. Wow. I was counting how many people outside of the United States are in the top 20, right? So like if granted, the US and North America tend to dominate that, and we have obviously a high concentration of Canadians at the top. But that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So half of the top 20 are international across. And so that would be cool if the international event rotated every year.
Yeah, agreed. Lauren, thoughts? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, you guys said everything that I would have said. Those were my initial thoughts too, is this is US centric. We need to get out into Europe more. And I think FitFest could be a great option. I know that they're doing the like elite showcase, but I think that it's something to consider in years moving forward. And Dave mentioned on his weekend review that this was just an idea that he had. He's been keeping track. And if you guys want to look at a breakdown of the numbers and the rankings, Helpin on Known and Knowable, his Instagram account, he has some graphs that kind of have everybody ranked. And then based on what we know from Wodapalooza, you can start to make your own graph on who would then potentially be eligible to advance. Obviously, we don't know everyone who's going to Wodapalooza quite yet, and there's always some surprises. But
and I mean, it'd be also cool to somehow then tie that back into the season, because if the Triple Crown winners, finish at the top of the leaderboard, invite them back for like an open announcement, or take them to one of like help use that, include some.
The
of the
more that we can tie in to the entire season, on season and off season, the more. Or the better storylines that you're going to have, and the more buy-in you get from the athletes to want to do something like this. Because to do the games, Wodapalooza and Rogue, and to choose doing Wodapalooza as an individual over team, and I mentioned this on Death By, I just don't know that top 20 caliber athletes really want to do individual by the time they get to Wodapalooza, especially if they've already done Rogue.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. That's just an assumption. But I think the athletes like Wodapalooza because they can have fun being on some of these cool teams that we see every year. So you would have to get buy-in from them.
I like what you mentioned about tying the games of the off season, because now, and it's a story anyway, but you just have a little extra thing to pay attention to when you're at the CrossFit Games, assuming they're going to continue to do cuts, that if you make it on that final cut, you're Triple Crown eligible.
There's more on the line.
Just a little bit more.
I love when there's more on the line.
Yeah, for sure. It's one more thread that you can continue throughout the entire season. Okay, next thing we wanted to talk about. I really want to get
real quick. What's the name of the turkey trot you're doing? Is it?
Are you going to sign up, Tommy?
I was thinking about signing up.
It's
actually,
Silicon Valley something.
Is it like the gobble till you wobble?
No.
I like that name.
Okay. Gobble till you wobble.
Get up ungodly early and run a 5K.
Is there free pie at the end,
Sean? I don't think so. I know.
Oh.
I think my son's actually doing a separate one, so I might actually have to try. Oh, okay. Keep up with my wife because she's a really good runner.
Yeah, your wife is fit.
Yes, she is. She can. She's just mentally tough too. She just can suffer like anybody else, man. So anyway, okay. The other thing we want to talk, and that which is why she probably wants to do a turkey trot
and beat you.
Yeah. Oh, she will crush me. It won't even be won't even be close.
She won't run together with you?
Maybe she might, but I'll tell her just out of embarrassment. Like, just please go ahead and let me just suffer on my own here. I wanted to get to, and I want to get your guys' thoughts primarily on this because you have direct experience with it. But the other big thing that happened is that Morning Chalk Up got sold to Pillar 4 Media. That is also the parent company of Barbend. And Barbend has a very big presence in the fitness space, specifically weightlifting, powerlifting, things like that. They've dabbled in CrossFit a little bit. You can go to their site. They have a CrossFit section on there. But they've acquired Morning Chalk Up. This is another thing you guys talked about on Death by Lauren, and I think Matt O'Keefe had the best take on it, which is that we have an entity coming in that wants to put money into a CrossFit media source, and that and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, at the end of the day, benefits the whole ecosystem. And I think that's a positive. Better coverage, more coverage, good for the sport. But both of you have worked there. I did not. What were your thoughts when you heard this had happened? Lauren, we can start with you.
Let's start with Tommy.
Okay.
I was actually going to say the same thing to you, but I mean,
you can start this one.
You could argue that maybe I was Morning Chalk Up's first outside hire. I think they had their core group that started for 2016. And then when all the layoffs happened in 2018, they reached out to me immediately to work as a staff writer. So, and I worked there from to varying levels, 2018 to 2022, as a staff writer, helping guide the sport coverage, being kind of a sounding board for everyone. By the time I was getting ready to leave, I would say I was kind of one of the senior staff writers for them in terms of like sports coverage and helping kind of guide some of the content there. But I don't think I really talked about this publicly when I left, because I left last year a little bit before the 2022, a little bit before the games. And, it was something that was a long time coming. And I felt like the direction of the outlet and myself were going in separate directions. And there was just some things that over the time, it just kind of like made it feel like maybe my time with them was up. Like it was a good opportunity to work with them early on once things were changing, and allowed me to go cover the sport, which I'm grateful for, in a variety of places. But that I just felt that there was a ton of talent turnover in terms of writers and staff. And I just felt like there was some maybe some deeper seated issues within the organization that weren't going to get solved by anything that I did. So I was just like, I at this point, I'd rather just go focus on what we're doing, and maybe give someone else the opportunity to go write for them and see if they can, make a difference there. So with that in mind, I think that it's a good thing that they're getting sold. I think it's just going to be a fresh, not necessarily a fresh start, because I think they're going to continue to do a lot of what they do in terms of trying to put out a lot of content, put a lot of written stuff, newsletters covering the sport. They've been more affiliate focused for sure over the last year, but I think this could be a fresh set of eyes and take and approach that can maybe help them grow and better improve their output to what I think they can be potential wise. Cool. Lauren, that makes sense.
I will echo all of Tommy's statements and sentiments. Thank you for setting that up. We'll leave that part at that. And I think that this is the best possible outcome for the growth of Morning Chalk Up and the growth of coverage in not just the CrossFit space, but the fitness space. As of now, they will be the only written publication that covers CrossFit, but has these other outlets that are covering powerlifting and weightlifting. And because of that, you're in turn going to get more eyeballs on CrossFit, which is better for the ecosystem. Regardless of how you feel about Morning Chalk Up, if you feel like they've done you wrong, or you've had a bad experience, or that's not your source of news, that is okay. But I think that this could potentially give people an opportunity to maybe gain a bit of trust back in them. And it just gives another opportunity to see how everybody in this ecosystem can grow by having other fitness verticals under one space. And I think that that is something that shows positive growth to have something like that. And I'm curious to see what direction is taken. I know from the article that Joe Genitin Palawa, their senior editor, wrote, he said that they will be the same morning chalk up and not much will change, but obviously leadership is changing, and not that they necessarily will take a new direction, but I'm curious to see in the coming months, are there going to be more hires? Is everything going to be the same, or will we have an actual different feel? Will there be any crossover between the staff who are writing for weightlifting versus CrossFit? Because I think that there could be a really good hybrid system or a marriage where each of the fitness styles could benefit from each other. So I see this, in my personal opinion, as a step in the right direction for the company.
Yeah, and that's an interesting approach, because it reminds me a lot of more or less what has made Rogue successful, right? Obviously, they're very invested in CrossFit, but as an equipment company, they're interested in any sport that puts a barbell in your hands. And what Rogue has done a really good job of is bringing all of those barbell sports and weightlifting sports, strongman, whatever it be, into the same room together and having this like cross-pollination. And as a result, you've got a bunch of CrossFitters that have like loved the strongman sport, and strongmen that have come over and like look at what Martins has done and just approaching, fitness sports in general. And
or even Mitchell Hooper is a great example.
Yeah.
Where you see the hybrid, and fans of CrossFit are now watching Mitchell Hooper and watching what he's doing.
And that has proven fruitful for the other sports. Like you go back a decade ago and look at where weightlifting as a sport, American weightlifting particularly, has benefited from the growth of CrossFit. Same with powerlifting, strongman, all those things. Like that benefit has always flowed primarily, I would say, more so in one direction. Like I remember talking to Phil Andrews, the former CEO and head of USA Weightlifting 5-6 years ago, and he was saying like the number of people that are just registered USAW coaches are signing up for the American Open, and they're having multiple, like the American Open used to be a single day event, a session for everything else, no additional waves, and now they have 4 versions of the American Open. They have A, B, C, and D sessions based on the qualification standards that everyone is hitting, and there's just more people participating. And now it'd be cool to see that integrated in a way that comes back to CrossFit as well, and kind of keeps all of those sports working maybe a little bit more hand in hand, and at least like keeping people interested and fit and healthy.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy for everybody that's over there. That now I think there's a lot of good people still over there. You mentioned Joe Genitin Palawa, great dude.
That was the biggest issue, was staff turnover.
And then hopefully that calms down now. And the people who, I don't know, how many full-time employees do they have?
No clue.
I
honestly no clue.
Full-time employees, not many, but I do think the amount of staff writers is underestimated by the community. I think they probably have between 6 and 8
so that's
part-time staff writers.
Right.
And they might write once a month. They might write once a week. I mean, at least from my experience, there was never for most of us, there was never necessarily a quota of how much you needed to write. You would just get paid per piece. And I don't know if that's the same business structure that they use, but full time, I can't speak to that.
Yeah. Okay. I was just.
Yeah. I think the number has typically been around that, like when they were at, say, quote unquote, full operating capacity. And I think back to when I would say, it sounds weird to say, but I guess when I felt like Morning Chocolate was at its peak, and we had there was a full-time staff, a lot of us involved, like Lauren. That was how obviously how Lauren and I met.
Yeah, we had a power team for.
There were some really good people who've gone through there.
There was some really good story ideas were collaborated on those calls.
Because Brian Friend worked there for a little bit, right?
Yeah. It was.
PC was there.
PC, Brian, myself, Lauren, and this is where I think there was enough of a kind of like a mind meld amongst everyone to where like we could just like pitch ideas, and that honestly, that collaborative type environment I think is like what's most beneficial for the sport too.
I think that's one of the biggest things missing in the sport.
And maybe that comes back now.
Yeah, when so many great minds and people who care about the sport and what's best for the sport and see growth and vision are in a room together. I mean, man, like, I mean, I feel it when the three of us are on calls, and I'm sure other outlets feel it when they're on calls, but it's like now everybody's kind of in their own space. And, I wish the people there the best. And again, I think that this is the best possible outcome for them.
Yeah,
For sure.
agreed with that. Well said. Okay, let's get in now to the main part of the show. That is the interview that I did last Friday with Brent Fikowski, athlete and I think president of the PFAA, and Dylan Malitsky from Loud and Live Sports. Okay, let's bring in our guests for today. Joining me now, the VP of Sport for Loud and Live, Dylan Malitsky, and I guess we'll call you what? The
president
of the PFAA, yeah. Brent Fikowski. Guys, thanks so much for doing this. How you both doing?
Good.
Yeah, excellent.
I wanted to bring you on to talk about the announcement that Wodapalooza and the PFAA made about the partnership. So my first question is, and I guess, Dylan, you can start. I know you've had a good relationship with the PFAA in the past when it comes to Wodapalooza. So what has now changed, given that this seems to be now a formal partnership?
Yeah, I would say it really all started back when O'Keefe was really part of Loud and Live. I know that he had some conversations with Brent as Brent was seeking to be the steward behind, bringing the PFAA to life. And, we've always, me and Brent have had plenty of candid conversations around what's important to them, what's important to us, and how we could better and best collaborate. So I think fast forward to the games, I actually was probably the lone event organizer outside of Don who attended, their athlete meeting, at the hotel post the CrossFit Games this year. And, I really just expressed our desire to form a more formal partnership. And it was really us just extending an olive branch and saying, we see what you're trying to do. We understand the impacts it could have for the betterment of the entire sport, not just to better the pathway for the athletes to professionalize, but also for the events to standardize and create some trust with the greater community. Rising tides raise all ships. And so with that, the next step forward was for us to really sit down and ask, okay, what does it mean to form a partnership of this nature? And the PFAA was really forthright and like, hey, these are the requests, the types of things that we would like to see as part of any major event that we'd like for them to abide by. And there were things that we had to candidly negotiate a little bit. There are just some things that we're not, Wodapalooza and Miami in particular present some unique challenges and things that maybe we couldn't do in this first go around. But it was an ambitious wish list. But I would say that, and Brent, you can speak to it better than me, I think we accommodated the majority of those things. And I'm sure there's going to be an ever evolving list of things, but we really wanted to be, I don't want to say the pioneers, but we wanted to take an intentional step towards showing the PFA and the greater group of athletes in the community that we're athlete first, community first, and we want to do whatever it takes to help them further their initiatives.
Yep.
Brent, from your standpoint then, from the PFAA, why was this important?
Yeah, so for those of you listening, we're going to kind of, try to talk, it's funny, as I've been doing more and more work with the PFAA, I find myself sounding like a politician. Talking in these superlatives and all this kind of wishy-washy stuff. And so, this is something that's very concrete. It's something very real. If I'm turning into a politician, this is the enactment of a real law. And so, if you, there's links. I don't know if you guys can share them. If this is on YouTube, for example, you can share it. It's going to be in my link in bio. It's on the Wodapalooza website. It's on the PFA website. But you can go through if you want to and flick through the types of things that we sort of jointly agreed to. And so, we're going to do our best to hold Wodapalooza accountable. They're going to do their best to hold themselves. Oh yeah, here it is. To hold themselves accountable. You read through it, might put you to sleep. But preventative nature, the nature of preventative stuff like this is it's not necessarily sexy. It can be a little more fun and exciting to point fingers when an event's done and say, oh, this was bad and this could have been better and I never would have done this. And so this is a method of trying to eliminate those mistakes before they happen. So, one of the things that we're trying to do is the PFA, one of the things that we know professional athletes want, but all athletes want, they want to go to a competition that's safe and that's fair. And so those are really the two overarching things. And then there's some other things in here that are sort of logistics that maybe don't directly fall underneath safety or maybe don't necessarily directly fall underneath fairness, but it's just it just makes the competition better, makes it easier to follow, makes it more convenient. So things like convenience and professionalization, some of those things aren't don't really boil down to safety or fairness. And so it's sort of a way of like, how can the PFA, the combined experience of these professional athletes, lend some, you know, worthwhile advice to Wodapalooza to run the best event possible, without any of us seeing the workouts. Like, that's an important distinction, right? So no one at the PFA is going to see any of the workouts before they're released, but like, what are the types of advice and rules and guidelines that we can provide so that when those workouts are announced, because that's usually the core fundamental thing that can go really well or go, you know, maybe poorly. What are the things around those workouts, and then the things like within those workouts we can give guidelines on, so that when they are announced and when the weekend's over, we want athletes from the pro level to the intermediate level to all levels at an event like Wodapalooza to just go, yeah, like, that was a good competition. You know, I got exactly what I signed up for. You know, I'm willing to, you know, I paid money myself to go. I paid money as an entrance fee. I paid for an experience, and it exceeded or met those expectations. And hopefully we can eliminate as many of those, like, oh man, my judge this, or the scoring this, or the schedule that, or that one workout felt unfair, or I felt unsafe in this situation. You just like try to eliminate as many of those things as possible. And that was kind of the nature of this. And so it's a really, you know, I'm really excited. This is like a big step forward, and kind of the hope is that more and more competitions can either, we'll look to like sort of directly partner like this with Wodapalooza, or, I mean, you know, these things are now, it's just online. So if, you know, if you're some local competition that you're running and you want to run, you know, a quality event, you can just copy and paste this. You know, you can tag us or something if you want, but you don't have to, right? You can just copy and paste this and go, oh, these are like good ideas, so that when I run my little event or big event, I'm going to try and follow these same guidelines to run like a good event.
Dylan, you mentioned that your competition in the city of Miami might have some limitations that prevent you from maybe enacting all of this stuff. But what was the stuff that you said, like, top line, this is, you know, a no-brainer and also no problem for us to take care of?
Yeah, I mean, the things you can expect, I think there's quite a number. You know, I would say, just to touch quickly on the limitations, obviously space has always been a challenge with Bayfront Park as a venue, weather, the implications of what weather could have an impact. But those things aside, those are the areas where we have challenges. I think the things that were no-brainers were, you know, as professional athletes, there's been challenges with other events and getting athletes paid on time. Like, that's a big one that doesn't necessarily fall under safety, but, you know, guaranteeing that we're going to get all of the winners paid within 90 days. You know, that's a big one for us. Yeah, and you know, knowing that they can bank on that. They're professionals. They depend on this money as their source of income. So that's one. The others are things around, you know, workout releasing, right? There's nothing holding us back from being able to let folks know. You know, in the past, we've taken this approach, and I know a lot of events do, of creating this story and making the workouts a character in the story, where they want to be able to announce them on site last minute. But what that does is pose a lot of logistical challenges and you know, not just on the event execution perspective, but athletes knowing where to go, what to expect, and either just a slew of things. So we've agreed to a timeline and making sure that events are announced ahead of time. Honestly, that whole doc was something that our team reviewed at length on multiple calls, and then went back to the PFAA. So anything within in there, they're all no-brainers for us. There's nothing there that we're saying to ourselves, I'm not sure if we can execute this. If we committed to it, we're committing to it. And, you know, at the end of the day, all we have is our word, and we plan to follow through on everything within that document.
Brent, what were some of the things from your perspective that you said before we even get to the second step, that these are just like the non-negotiable stuff that we got to make sure that are in here, regardless of limitations at the venue?
No, I get the question for sure. I mean, I've gotten so deep into this that I'm like trying to, I don't know. It's like I remember everything so much, but at the same time, I went through it so many times. It's all a bit of a blur. You know, I don't know if there was anything specifically. I think one thing was, let me look it up here. You know, cuts. That was kind of a big thing. Just to see, like, you know, and that wasn't necessarily a deal breaker. And I feel like with this, you know, we wanted to start with Wodapalooza. Obviously, you know, Dylan put it aptly where they put out an olive branch. We didn't have to go begging and kicking and screaming, asking for it. You know, he came to us first, which we're like super grateful for. But it's a good partnership because we already know they run a good event. And I've had other events reach out to me asking for a partnership, and I've had to say no, at least for now, because it's like, I don't know your event. Like, you know, might be their first go around. And I'm like, well, if all of a sudden your event's, you know, doesn't go well, yeah, there's a specific example I could use. But if your event doesn't go well, then it shows very poorly on me. And it's like, if we don't have people there, boots on the ground, like managing the whole thing, then that's going to tarnish our brand. So we have enough faith in Wodapalooza that they can deliver on that. So there wasn't really anything that was non-negotiable as far as like, if we don't include this, we can't work together. Because I think what you have to understand, and I think people might know this or might not, but like when I go to, let's say, semifinals or the CrossFit Games or even Rogue or Wodapalooza in prior years, you're signing up, you're often paying an entry fee, you know, $300 or so US, and they promise nothing, right? Like there's, you know, you could go to, you know, let's say Dubai or Rogue or any of those events, and they go, all right, first event's a 1 mile run. If you can't do it in under 5 minutes 30, get the hell out of here. You know, like it could be as it's simple as that, right? And in a way that kind of happened at the 2019 games where everyone had already paid their tickets, and there was like talks of cuts. There was an assumption there'd be cuts, but you know, half the field went home after one event, and there was nothing written down saying that wouldn't happen. And so that's like vastly changes your experience as an athlete. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're signing up for, is an experience. Like you're paying for the product, and the service is like these series of events you're putting yourself through. So really it was like, let's just get, you know, I came to them with just a massive list of potential things, not super well organized. Thankful to Grace on my team who organized it a little bit better, and, you know, probably too many words in there. And then, you know, Wodapalooza and, you know, Dylan's team, I can't imagine how much time they spent, but going through and, okay, this is like 6 sentences. Let's just condense it to one. And, you know, I didn't want to like put like a, you know, a hard and fast thing. You know, it's like, hey, as many of these that we can get in that you feel you can deliver on like confidently, let's keep them in, and let's not get too wrapped up in, you know, if we take a few out. I'd honestly say, you know, if I'd written, you know, 1,000 things, like I'd say 900 made them through onto this final list. And the small ones were just wish list things. I honestly don't even remember what they are at this moment, but eventually they'll be up there on the PFA website as sort of like options for another event. It's like, if you're comfortable, you know, guaranteeing this type of thing. But there were a lot that I thought were kind of wish list things that, you know, they did put in, and, you know, they did want to keep in, and they wanted to agree to. And, you know, even the payout schedule, like 90 days, that's huge. I mean, you know, it's been like, I just got paid for semis, you know, a couple of weeks ago. Right. So I think that's like a 6 month, 5.5 month turnaround. So 90 days is, you know, huge improvement from most of the payouts I'm, you know, expecting. And that wasn't something, it's not like I put in 90 days or, you know, the PFA team put in 90 days. It was like, oh, if you're willing to some sort of payout schedule, like that'd be great. And for them to commit to that is huge. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, yeah, I could go on and on.
Well, I wanted to dive into some of the specifics here, because
Please.
as I was looking through this, the first thing that jumped out at me is the PFAA liaison. And I guess, Brent, we'll start with you. It's like, what in your mind is that person's responsibility, and how does that person deal with any sort of issues that come up in real time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, for this competition, because it's our first go around, a lot of it's just going to be fly on the wall, right? It's just going to be us being in there. By us, it won't be me. I might, I'm just doing individual this year. So on the last 2 days, you know, maybe a little bit, but the first 2 days, it'll likely be Grace and Mitch will be there. And it's really just there, you know, historically speaking, there's been this, a bit of a curtain between the athletes and how the events run and how decisions are made, right? This is at the games, this is at semis, this is at all the major events I've been to. So, you know, if you file an appeal, it feels like a bit of a black box, and then they'll come back to you and they'll say, yeah, this is what we're doing. And, you know, in some instances, you know, at some competitions, I've felt, and other athletes have felt, that the rulings they make on those appeals are unfair at the live competitions. Like, they don't make sense. And there's no, you know, they're the judge, the jury, the executioner. They make the rules, they break the rules, they follow the rules. Like, that's like the system we live in. And each event operates autonomously from every other event more often than not. And so this is kind of an opportunity for an athlete representative. Their only goal is to get in there and understand better how an event like Wodapalooza, which is run really well, how they run. Maybe that outside view can see some ways that they can streamline things, but also to come back to, you know, the board members of the PFA like myself, and then report back to the broader group of professional athletes and make them understand how certain decisions were made, kind of improve that communication for things like appeals or like weather delays. And it's really like about creating trust. So, you know, if there's a weather delay, and, you know, so for Rogue, for example, you know, there were weather issues, weather delays, workouts were changed, and I'm under I don't believe anything was done like maliciously. And I believe that as well when it comes to appeals. But I think what sometimes happens is when there's a lack of communication, we as athletes and then also fans are left to our own devices to determine why certain decisions are made. Like, you'll see appeals or, penalties in the open, and there's these people put on their tinfoil hats, right? And they're like, this is just to help, Pat Vellner get his 7th straight this, and, they're shitting on this guy who no one knows about or whatever, right? You put on your tinfoil hat, and I've done that in the past too. And I realize now that I know more of the people that work at CrossFit and I know the people that work at Wodapalooza, that's not the case. Like, I really don't think it's ever the case. But if we don't have an athlete rep in there, kind of better understanding what's going on, it can be challenging to build that trust. And without trust, it's hard for either of us to like make progress united together. And one of the areas that we need to make progress in, obviously safety and fairness, but like financially, is, we need the athletes to feel more bought into the process and more partners in events, so we can help elevate those events. We have large social media followings. How can athletes leverage those to sell more tickets or to get more people watching the live stream? And a lot of times there's a sentiment amongst the athletes, and this isn't something that, like, for the listener, you're never going to hear athletes specifically say this, but there are at times this sentiment of like, hey, I'm going to go and compete, I'm going to take their money, but I don't particularly like those people. Like, sometimes that's a real sentiment, because it feels like, especially if you've got burned in the past, and I don't think it's maliciously burned, but like, things will happen. And if there's a lack of communication, it can rub you the wrong way. And then there's a lack of like trust and a partnership between athletes and event organizers. And like, I really want to break that down and improve that trust so that, it's great that we're doing this with the safety and fairness. And I think that's like a huge step in the right direction. And then kind of the next step is becoming more financial partners. And so having that liaison, they're not going to have any like real power, but it's an opportunity for them to, communicate with athletes and, kind of like be that bridge between athletes and the event. And then the athletes know that like the only reason that person is there is for the athletes. Yeah. And they're not hired by Wodapalooza. And that's kind of the difference, is sometimes at some events, it's like, oh, this is your athlete communication person. It's like, yeah, but their salary is paid by the event. So when push comes to shove, who are they going to side with? They're going to side with the event every single time, because that's, at the end of the day, that's who they're beholden to. So,
right. Well, Dylan, I want to come back to this in a second, but Dylan, I want to get your take on this, because I know when you guys have a really good team that runs very well, you've been together for a while, and when you sort of introduce an outside person into that who's just going to kind of be looking over your shoulder, I'm guessing maybe there's some trepidation there, but why did this make sense for you?
Yeah, frankly, there's not. And I think it's just because I think it's more just reiterating the point that we have nothing to hide. Like, Wodapalooza does things the right way and for the right reasons. And any of the decisions that we've made that have had to be difficult in the past, such as weather delays and changing workouts because of weather-related issues, they were all made with the best intentions and the best rationale based on the facts and things that have preceded it. So, frankly, I just think it was actually a no-brainer. Like, I welcome them in, and it goes back to the intention of the partnership, which is to instill trust in the athletes that we're doing the things we say we're going to do and for the right reasons. Nobody from the team echoed a sentiment of that being a concern or challenge. Also, knowing that this is a step in the right direction. This, the PFAA liaison is right now a concept that we're putting into execution, but how it looks at Wodapalooza this year may be very different than how it looks at the next one or any other event for that matter. We're really just kind of going about this from a trial perspective, right? They may have a more formalized role. Brent mentioned they don't really have any necessarily clear deliverables or responsibilities while they're on site, but that could change very much in the future. And we're willing to be the guinea pigs and willing to take this initial step with them to help craft what that role can look like in the future to further the sport. So, no concern on our part. We have nothing to hide. Pumped for them to actually see behind the curtain, actually, as a matter of fact, to maybe receive some of the data and things in their minds that they maybe seen, decisions being made that were maybe trivial, or, it's not the case. Like, there's a lot of thought put behind every decision that's made so that all the stakeholders, both event fans, athletes, spectators, that the safety and the things that we've talked about before are upheld.
So, Brent, I want to go back to what you were talking about with appeals and just run through a hypothetical here and how you envision the liaison working within that process and then communicating that to the athletes? Ideally, what does that look like to sort of eliminate some of the things that you were talking about confusion about how a decision is made or how it gets communicated, so it's not a game of telephone?
Yeah, I think I think the appeals process will run as it's run last year at Wodapalooza. Like it's going to run the exact same. And we'll leave that in the capable hands of the Wodapalooza team. I think it's more, if the athlete really doesn't like the result, and they're like maybe upset about it, Wodapalooza is probably going to say, hey, like it's done. Like we're not doing like appeal on appeal on appeal on the same topic. Like it's over. But then hopefully, at least like right now, the hope would be that then the athlete liaison from the PFA that was in the room, maybe heard the conversation, can go to them and say like, listen, like this is, like you can trust me that this is how it went down. Like this is why, and like, not that Wodapalooza doesn't usually provide a why if they deem it's necessary. I mean, if it's a matter of like, hey, I think I beat this guy, and then like to the line, and then Wodapalooza's like, you didn't though, like that's kind of it. There's nothing really more to be said other than maybe the athlete liaison being like, yeah, I saw the tape, and they're right.
It's an objective third party perspective, right, in the room that can say that, like Brent mentioned, that it's one thing to hear it from our staff.
Yep.
It's another thing to hear it from someone that is theoretically on their side, or rather in the middle of both. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
The next thing I wanted to get to was it's actually right below that. There's a PFAA liaisons, and then there's a thing on judging. And as we all know, that's always a hot topic, whether it's online, your local comp, the games, whatever it is. And it's the third bullet point where it reads, provide both virtual and on-site training for all competition judges. All judges will be briefed and trained in depth on all workouts and will enforce identical movement standards across lanes and across heats. So what does on-site training mean?
I'll let Dylan handle that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, we have a very, very capable director of judges. Kevin is an amazing individual. Has been with us now for several years, and he's put a very good amount of time in developing, the protocols for what the judges will do on site. He's been part of many events in that same leadership role. So on site, there's I don't know if you realize, these judges arrive very many times 2 hours before the start of each day's competition to review the various workouts and the standards for each, literally walking through them stage by stage. So a lot of the on-site will be that. There'll be some pre-work as well on the day of check-in. There's breakout sessions in which all of the judges come together and break out by stage to review what the weekend will look like. And then the virtual, at least at this stage, right? This is a step in the right direction. We are requiring them to take the online judges certification. Again, that's just step one for this year. There will be a pre-call beforehand that will probably mirror a lot of the things that you're going to see on site in that pre-briefing. But the more they can hear it, the more we can reiterate it. The more we feel like they'll be prepared for the rest of the weekend.
The other thing, then, go ahead, Brent, if you want to add to that.
I'll quickly jump in. So judging is something the PFA knows is obviously kind of a missing link right now in general in our sport. And I mean, if you follow any sport, everyone's complaining about NBA refs right now, so it's like, we're never going to get to a place where like the judging is perfect. The two things that we've identified that are like the key drivers to having better judges by the way, is my audio fine?
Yeah.
Are you getting okay, good. Sorry, my heater's running. It's a bit noisy. Tried to turn it off. But so there's two main things with judging. The first is like education and training. And the second is workout design. So if the workouts are designed with the right movements in the right scenarios, with the good movement standards, you're going to have way less problems, right? So that's like a key component. And the other one is training and, certification and reviewing and, like accreditation, all that kind of stuff. So we're working with someone. It's kind of like, it's in progress, working on an actual judging certification kind of system. It's being worked on by some talented judges in the US, and we're helping to support them in any way we can. And then when it comes to workout design, movement standards, this isn't public yet because it's like what this used to look like. It's a bit sporadic, but it's been shared with the Wodapalooza team. And it's a spreadsheet with every movement that's been programmed so far at any competition. And, links and details and suggestions on movement standards, on setup, on safety, on equipment setup, on combinations, like just you name it, like every little possible thing. And hey, this movement's been programmed in these sorts of ways, or for something like a handstand push-up, there's been like 6 different standards. Like, these are the best 2 standards. Please use one of these. So that's right now. It's not public yet. It'll be public in the next few months, but it's privately been shared with Wodapalooza. So when they program a workout and they're like, oh, we're going to include rope climbs, it's like, here are all the safety recommendations from the PFAA on rope climbs. Here are all the movement standard recommendations that we have so far. And it's going to be an evolving document. But when it comes to judging, like, those are the 2 things. And, we're definitely not at the finish line of the certification and the standardization and all that stuff, but it's a work in progress. And so hopefully, the athletes can see at this competition that, it's as good or better than it's ever been. It's certainly not going to be perfect, but it's going to be as good or as better than it's ever been at this event. So,
well, and along those lines, the next bullet point, I think, is about provide our judging volunteers with performance reviews that allow the head judge and team leads to provide in-the-moment feedback to judges during the competition weekend. Specifically, what is that? Is that just a conversation? Is it you're sitting down and doing like a kind of a formal review that then, for lack of a better term, goes in a file, or what? Can you just give me some more specifics on that process? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I can tell you there already is a detailed database of information about judges that have been part of our event in the past, as led by Kevin. Okay. So to that end, yes, as far as our performance reviews internal, as we're seeking to assign judges that request, we have over, dang near 1,000 volunteers that sign up. I think the number is close to 400 that are judges, fall within that camp. So there's no shortage of people interested in being part of judging at the event. With that said, we're really particular about where to put who, right? Like, there's some roles and different divisions in which we'll put them. Obviously, we want fairness across the board, whether it be elite all the way down to the open division, as we have now just renamed sort of our scale division. But yes, we keep a very close track, and to that definitely influences assignments. That's one. And then 2, yes, on the spot, the training of our assistant and head judges by stage, making sure that they feel like they have the ability to step in when necessary. That was a big point of the PFA within the document that's outlined, to be able to give them real-time corrective feedback and overturn a call potentially without feeling like you need to enable, or rather, you want to give them rope, but if they're not doing right by the athlete that's performing, they need to be able to give that feedback. And then post a sit-down discussion and making sure that they know if there's something that's probably more on the constructive side. Obviously, they'll give them a thumbs up and a pat on the back if they're doing well, but beyond that, at the end of the weekend, making sure they're aware of how their performance was and how that would potentially influence their ability to judge in the future with any of the other Loud and Live events.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, Brent, the next step in this, and I know you've talked about this before, is to make this a wider system to where every event then can look at a pool of judges that have been sort of judged on the same set of criteria, so they know, okay, here are the ones that we want for the elite divisions, and here are the ones that we can probably train up a little bit more and can do an open division. Am I correct in assuming that or not?
Yeah. So the future there is having, a directory of competition judges, right? Where you have, hey, these judges have taken, these courses. These are the amount of hours they've put in. These are the competitions they've judged at. Here are their performance reviews. Here are the levels of judging they've judged at. Oh, they judged elite level or intermediate, and this is their performance review. And so that wouldn't be like public domain. It wouldn't just be available for anyone to go on like rateyourprofessor.com type energy. But if you're a competition organizer and you're looking for judges, hopefully, what would be great, and this is like not going to happen right away, but there are some people we're working with that are working on this. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but that, let's say you're running the Crash Crucible next year and you're looking for judges, instead of this kind of ad hoc nature that we sort of have now, where things are sort of shared, but not so much. It's like you can go on there and say, looking for judges this weekend, this skill level. And then there's like applicants. It just becomes like a job site type thing. So that's the future, right? Like that's not available right now. But this is kind of like building into that. And so if Wodapalooza is willing to store some of that information at least, then later on it could be added to like a wider database that's available to more than just the Wodapalooza team.
How much input, if any, should athletes have in that process?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think so. For example, in the NHL, when you finish a game, the athletes, the players have the option to rate the ice quality. So like, was it, I don't know what you look for in ice. Was it too icy? But that's my, I'm not a proud Canadian there, I guess. But, so they rate the quality of the ice. And so then the maintenance team takes that into consideration as they, ensure the ice quality is high for the next game. And so I think there's the possibility where there's room for that as well. Where athletes can, but I think obviously those reviews would be separate from the performance reviews of the head judge. It wouldn't all just be mashed together, because you're going to get some athletes that are consistently shaving reps and consistently getting no reps, and then consistently saying like, these judges, every judge I had this weekend was terrible. It's like, well, maybe it's you, pal.
Maybe you didn't move well. Yeah.
Maybe you didn't squat below parallel all weekend. So I think there is a place for that, but it would have to be certainly separated and, probably, quite frankly, taken at with a little more of a grain of salt than with what the head judge, for example, gave them as a rating. But if you're consistently seeing issues from the head judge and you're getting negative reviews from athletes, it's like, okay, maybe they need to improve their training. It doesn't mean all of a sudden they can't judge anymore immediately, but it's like, that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. As we kind of wind this thing down, Dylan, I know obviously we're looking forward to a couple of months, but then we have to look forward again to September, because there's another Wodapalooza happening that's going to be happening on the West Coast. And I know you're still in the fog of planning for Miami, but is there anything you can share that people might not already know about what's going to happen in September, or what you're excited about there? And I'm assuming this partnership will still be part of that.
Yeah, you can assume for sure. Moving forward, we will be walking hand in hand with the PFAA as much as possible. I'm sure there'll be some developments to the partnership and in the terms that will probably get added to this document more. But yes, for sure. And I can tell you that planning for SoCal is well underway. And whenever you bring to fruition a brand new event, it requires quite a bit of planning. So we're kind of doing it in parallel. Our team's able to focus on both. With that said, there are some really exciting things that I'm not quite at liberty to share yet. The plan will be within the next couple of weeks, and then really hammer it home in Miami, which is the elite format for SoCal, which there's probably been some rumblings around. Maybe there hasn't been to at least the listener here of what it could look like, but it's going to be vastly different. And the purpose is to differentiate it from what we've done in Miami, and primarily taking into account actually a lot of the things that the PFAA have talked about, which is, from a safety perspective, the athlete that we're looking to entice to participate in this is one of which is probably just coming out of the games, and they're looking for some degree of an off season so that they can prolong their careers, right? You need, there's also a desire to have them compete somewhat more frequently, right? They can help bolster the support of the events and hopefully bolster the entire ecosystem. That was chatted about quite a bit at that athletes meeting just post games. But with that said, we're very cognizant of the wear and tear on the athlete's body. So the format is going to be one, let's just say, showcase is a word that comes to mind. And I know that maybe is thrown around loosely, but we have some a really cool concept that will be put into action. It's already determined. We're just now tying up loose ends to be able to roll it out here over the course of the next several weeks. So be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be really intriguing. It's going to be something the sport has never seen before, and one in which I think will, again, help elevate the professionalization of the sport more so than anything else.
That's fantastic. I fired up. Can't wait to see what you guys are cooking up. And then finally, Brent, I know we could probably do a whole separate interview on this, but would just love to get your sort of top line thoughts on the recent changes that were announced by CrossFit to the game season.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not sure, they kind of hinted that there were going to be some changes, and, there are changes. I'm very curious to see the workout design for the quarterfinals. Like, it's something I'm, cautiously optimistic that they get it right. But, I think one of the pros of the quarterfinals was that, the workouts very much were semifinal-ish quality. And so it's like the people that were competing at semis, you knew were capable of doing the types of things that needed to be done at semis. And that was I've been doing this now for a while. So I remember back in 2013 and 14, people would complain, we do these open workouts. They're very community. There's not a lot of high skill. It's just like, cycling and, engine. And then you get to regionals and it's heavy weights and tons of ring muscle ups and strict handstand push-ups. So the athletes that are getting there, you're leaving athletes at home that would be well suited to those tests. And so I hope that they don't regress back to, that format. And again, you're still going to get, Justin Medeiros is still going to make it. I should still probably make it, right? But then there'll kind of be like a flip-flop of athletes where maybe some that are, good at those high skill things and, really capable in those areas might not make it, which would be, a shame, even though, the thing is someone else will make it and they're going to have a great time. But, you want the best making it through. I don't know. I don't know if I have any really massive takeaways. It's, maybe that's time. Maybe there's room for that on another day. I'm wasn't really prepared for that question.
No, that's fine. I know there's a lot more questions than answers right now, but I know one of the things you've been very passionate about is giving more people more of an opportunity to compete. And
I feel like it doesn't
kind of happen.
I don't know. Yeah, and so for the masters and the age groups and stuff, I think there's I think that's exciting. I think there's some really positive things that are going to come from that. It's tough in North America. You look back to, let's say, 2013, the number of people that made it to regionals was like in the hundreds, and now it's 80 men total, right? And so it was used to be like 400, and that was a dream for a lot of people. And there hasn't been a lot to replace that. It just keeps kind of shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So that number becomes more and more challenging to get to, which makes it a more prestigious award to be like, I made it to semis in 2024. Like, look at me. But I think if there's not a replacement competition of maybe a slightly lower caliber or similar caliber for athletes to aspire to, it does end up, shrinking the sport, right? It means that less athletes are going to be training. Less people are going to be looking for one-on-one coaching. Less people are going to be, buying 5 pairs of sneakers. So, so all the little pieces in there, it would be nice if, there was the creation of, more events where more athletes can, strive to compete against people of their skill level that have like a tangible meaning, a cohesive season, regardless of your skill level. You can compete in a way that's like, brings you into the fold, as opposed to just, doing an online event and hoping you make it to the big show. And if not, your $20 helps support the pros. I think there's a better way, but that'll take some time.
All right. Well, I know we've been kicking that around for a while, and when you're ready to talk about that, we'd love to have you back on. And Dylan, would love to get you back on as well as we get closer, not only to, I guess, January. I can't believe that's only a couple of months away, and then September as well. So I know you head down, and best of luck, man. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys are cooking up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Appreciate it. Big thanks to Dylan and Brent for taking the time to do that interview. I was on a podcast with our friend Nico Ronau,
Yeah.
He does a podcast over in Norway, and we were talking about, he asked me, are you optimistic or pessimistic about where the sport is going or what the state of things are? After talking to Brent and Dylan, I was optimistic with that, because there are, regardless of what happens with CrossFit, and I mean that as the company, there are people in this ecosystem who are working hard to make sure that there is going to be a sport long term.
Well, that's what it's going to take, right? Like
and there's people working very hard and willing to work with CrossFit to make that happen. So I came at that with more optimism.
Yeah, CrossFit is still, we use this term a lot, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean the other gorillas can't get bigger.
Exactly.
And to make sure that if that gorilla fails, there's enough of a organizational structure in other areas to keep something going, because people are clearly invested in this. I think that's been one of the primary values of the PFAA, is like the athlete voice is getting collectivized in a way that allows them to be more effective and work more in unison with one another for their betterment, because they do bring in a lot of perspective and experience from their side that can benefit the sport. And I think that was apparent by the things that they worked with CrossFit to implement last season, and creating those communication channels, and doing so again here with Wodapalooza, in terms of like what they mentioned, the procedural updates and the athlete handbook, real-time online qualifier Q&A to address concerns, and then athlete communications and channels, I think, is really important, where they can like really sink their teeth in to making sure that like information gets where it needs to go, and that the athletes are at the forefront of that information to make sure, because they're the ones competing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I don't want to say that what CrossFit HQ does or doesn't do doesn't matter, because it does. However, in the same breath, I will say there are enough off-season competitions, and there are enough people in this space that want to keep the ecosystem thriving, that it will, regardless of what the business decisions are
gonna
made
look different. It would look different for
yeah,
sure.
it would look different, but I don't worry of the future of the sport, if that makes sense.
It does, because I think the bottom line is a lot of people out there willing to put in hard work to make sure that this is sustainable, and a lot of good ideas too. So
yeah, there are a lot of good ideas.
okay, well, we'll leave it at that, and let's move on to community support before we get into PRs and no reps. I actually got one community support that hits close to home. This happened here in San Jose, and it involves the law enforcement community. Sergeant Justin Jantz, who worked with the San Jose Police Department, 40 years old, recently passed away after a battle with illness. He has left a family behind, and the San Jose Police Department, the POA there, are trying to get help for his family during the holidays. Sergeant Jantz was a member of CrossFit SJPD, so he's also a CrossFitter. He worked for the San Jose Police Department for 16 and a half years. He led, served, and cared for his family so that his wife could be home with their children. He leaves behind his wife, Sarah, and their 3 kids, Kylie, Josiah, and Aubrey. And this holiday, they're trying to just help them out a little bit. If you're a member of the law enforcement community, that would be great if you could rally around one of your own families. And if you're just someone who wants to help out because he was a CrossFitter, that would be great too. You can go to www.sjpoa.com/Jantz. That's JANTZ to donate. And again, just hits a little close to home. My wife works very closely with the San Jose Police Department and their officers as an investigator for the county of Santa Clara. And it was important for me to get that out there. So if you can help, please do. www.sjpoa.com/Jantz, and our hearts go out to the Jantz family. So that's the one I had.
No doubt.
Anything else?
As far as community support, I mean, just thanks to everyone that participated in Chad 1000X a couple weekends ago. Born Primitive raised a bunch of money for their Veterans Day charity sale, which was great. Just a lot of good stuff. I know there are, we joke about the turkey trots, but a lot of them go towards good causes. So like the Monterey County Food Bank does one
for sure
up the road. That's the one I might actually end up doing. But yeah, it sucks to get up and run, but if you can do it for a good cause,
that does help.
Yeah.
Y'all are making me feel bad. Yeah, I just
come on, Lauren. Let's go. We're gonna go run a 5K. Come on,
Lauren can get up and walk and shuffle.
You can.
My 33-minute 5K.
Yeah,
time.
whatever.
Hey, no one said it had to be a PR.
That's right. Just got to get across the finish line. So, well, speaking of PR, let's go to PRs and no reps. Who's got a?
Okay.
I'm going to start with my no reps. I am going to no rep lack of spatial awareness.
Wait, I hate that.
This past week, twice on my little mountain road that I use to get up to my house. A lot of hairpin turns. Twice. Trucks that are way too big to be on these roads have jackknifed, like gotten stuck and have blocked both lanes. So you can't. I was going home. I went to the 5 a.m. CrossFit class at NC Fit. Coming back up Friday, come around a turn, and there's this Amazon truck just sitting there, and the driver is out just on the phone, And I pulled up. I go, "Are you going to move?" He goes, "I can't." I said, all right. So I had to turn around, chase him back, go all the way up this other road, all the way around. It was just like, and then it happened again, and then another truck. This is the third time I've seen this happen. One was a school bus.
How do you jackknife a school bus?
Very easily. They couldn't make the turn, so it got stuck.
Austin Powers style.
Yeah, more or less. So anyway, just know how big your vehicles are and what roads you should be taking, so I don't have to spend 5 hours trying to get home.
That's so funny because when you said spatial awareness, I was thinking you meant humans that get too close to humans.
That too.
And I hate that. So want to know what I'll do now? Oh, it's a great trick.
All right.
I will put the camera on my phone, and instead of taking a selfie of myself, I will turn it to the person who is too uncomfortably close
and take their picture
and snap their picture.
Wow.
And then they back away.
There you
exactly.
go. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, you would hate Hong Kong. I had someone spit on my shoes in Hong Kong.
It's
no personal space.
space. No rep.
I got a no rep. I'm no rep in Vegas, and this is a two-parter.
right.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
Tommy-
Travel sagas.
Tommy
with
Marquez,
Tommy.
what has gotten into you?
Exactly.
It's like no repping your second home.
I know. They had the F1 race
Oh,
this weekend.
that's a great.
They had to cancel the opening session for the practice because they didn't secure a manhole.
I saw that.
And it shredded
was
one of the
wild.
cars. Which, if you're going to spend all that money, come on. I mean, that'd be in the NFL. Come on, man.
Yeah. The
Uh,
one thing.
And then my other Vegas no rep is how I'm no repping how damn good the lines makers are. So, this weekend was a good weekend for the Marquez Bank of trustees in sports. And it comes down to Sunday. I'm hanging out with a bunch of my buddies on the East Coast. We decide to sprinkle a little on the Cowboys covering. And then the last minute, my buddy goes, you know what? Let's parlay it with the over. We're like, okay. And I was like, I want to do the Cowboys individual team over. And he's like, no, let's do the game. Cowboys hit their individual team over easily.
Didn't.
But the game went under by a half point.
Oh.
And it was because the Cowboys kicker missed an extra point. So that extra point would have been,
come on, man.
And we let everything roll over into that one.
Oh,
and it was just like, how did they know? How do they know exactly the line to put down? It's amazing.
It is.
The over-under was 43.5, and it hit 43. Nobody bets the under. No self-respecting gambler wants to put themselves through that. And yeah, so we were no rep to Vegas for being too damn good.
Too damn good. Laura, no rep.
Okay, my no rep is going to lead right into my PR.
Okay, so
Okay.
then
And
turn here.
okay, don't turn off this episode in my mid-sentence. You have to listen to the end. The same way everybody thought I no rep Taylor Swift, but that's not what I did.
Ooh, don't do that.
I want that
So
heat.
I am going to no rep the candy consumption in Germany.
Oh.
It is insane how socially acceptable it is of the amount of chocolate you can consume in one day. Like,
wow.
I need
their candy aisle like your head would pop off. The candy aisle in their grocery store and I'm not like a big gummy person, but chocolates.
Oh, yeah.
I have no self-control. I was allergic to chocolate from age kindergarten until I went off to college. So now you put chocolate in front of me and it is like Niagara Falls. I cannot stop consuming over and over.
Forbidden fruit must be tasted.
It's so bad.
Mhm.
So at the German Throwdown that I was at this past weekend, you go into the volunteer room and I kid you not, like pounds of chocolate
Wow.
just lay on the table. And obviously,
And it's
I have
quality
tried-
stuff, I bet, too, right?
Oh, it is
Mhm.
quality. And everyone is different. So you have to consume multiple ones.
You have
to
no
see,
choice.
what do I
Mm.
like? When am
Yeah.
I going to be back here? I don't know. How much can I fit in my suitcase? Can I bring it on the plane? So obviously, my candy ratio in my body right now, I'm like 80% chocolate, 20% water.
All right.
That
You're
is what I'm made up of.
You're
right
like
now.
you're like Augustus Gloop from Willy Wonka. Was he German? He was the one that fell into the river of chocolate.
Yeah,
remember?
yeah, he
Oh
was.
my
Augustus.
God. Yes, you're right. That is me. That is me right now.
He's from Dusseldorf. I just looked it up right now. You were the female
all makes
version of
sense.
Augustus Gloop.
So that is probably why my resting heart rate hasn't gone. Oh, it's 90 right now. Amazing. It hasn't
Sheesh.
gone under 87 today.
All
So
right.
we're not doing well, but that's okay because it was worth it. And from that into my PR is the amount of chocolate. that
Well
Germany
done.
has.
It's like
Homer
Homer.
Cliff, she was in a 12-round fight with that.
It's like Homer J. Simpson to alcohol, the
Yeah,
cause of and
and
solution
solution.
to all of life's problems.
Mhm. Well, good. I'm
And
glad that
in
you got to indulge a little bit.
Yes, and in the same breath, I just want to PR the two off competition, the two off season. There we go. Competitions that I covered was the German Throwdown.
Mhm.
I mean, for a stressful environment, they were so laxed. Their whole team were hustlers. They got things done. Very hard workers. And same can be said about Desert City Classic that was in Phoenix the weekend
Awesome.
before. So
Yep.
kudos to those comps.
Cool. I'm going to PR Jason Khalipa for his men's club workouts that he's doing around here.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're
He's like,
great.
no, he's awesome, man. Jason's invested a lot of personal time in this too. And I think some of his own money buying equipment. getting people out, working out, whether it's at the elementary school where his kids go. They went out to the beach in Santa Cruz. We did one at his garage on Saturday. He's really dedicated to just getting local dads fit. And it's open to anybody. He throws out the invitation. Whoever shows up, great, let's throw down. And he's super passionate about it. And I think it's an awesome thing. So PR to Jason Khalipa for spreading the word of fitness.
That's epic. I've got two. I'm PRing Tommy's travel malarkey. Because that was...
What was it now? Aliens, flood?
It was... I mean, I take a
volcanic eruption.
I take a dance with the devil every time I leave my local airport, but got stuck.
Gremlins.
It was. We had a 5-hour delay from Newark to Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Couple hour flight, easy, maybe hour 45. Supposed to leave at 7 p.m. Didn't leave till after midnight. So first they had to change a tire. Then when they changed the tire, they discovered another mechanical issue with said tire mechanics that would take a lot longer. Then they had to find us a new plane. Then they had to find us a new crew. And eventually, after all of that happened, we left 5 hours later. We think we're in the clear, right? We're getting on the plane. You know, there's the jet bridge that connects to the plane. Tiff and I are getting on. And as we're getting on, like the rest of the cleaning crew is coming on as well, because they're like trying to turn this over quick. As like literally Tiff's in front of me and she goes to step, it disconnects, it like shifts and disconnects from the opening of the plane and drops like 1.5 feet. Just
terrifying.
And all these sirens start going off. I immediately like grab her by the backpack and pull her back in. And there's like the cleaning crew, they start freaking out. They're like, what the hell? I'm like, I don't know. What do we? They're like, I'm like, let's get off of the jet bridge. So we start backing out and I wait for like maybe 10, 15 seconds. Nothing happens. And it's stuck there, but there's still a gap. And I'm like, you know what? We've been waiting for 5 hours. I'm not going to let this keep us off.
Jumping it.
I'm like, let's go. Tiff's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, let's go. We hopped in, and then the cleaning crew followed suit, and nobody addressed it. They just left it like
another day.
They just left it like that, and we fly away. If we fly off, but yeah. So that was an interesting, fun little travel delay that I didn't document well, but
fantastic.
Yeah, but thankfully everything on the way home was good,
All
even going through Dallas. And my last PR, I got one more. Baby fever. We spent some time with some babies on this. It is. One of my groomsman Scott.
What's 9 months after the holidays?
My buddy Scott, Sean, he was one of the groomsmen too. He had the like the long ponytail that was pulled back. His wife was actually, they found out they were pregnant the day after our wedding. Their 5-month-old Mateo, he's a chonker. I mean, he's a big old chonker. He's like 5 months and he's in like 1-year-old clothes.
Jeez.
He's like 99th percentile and everything. Tiff like picked him up and she like held him the first time. And he looked at her and like giggled, and it was game over. It's game over. She searched. She goes, "I want one of these."
Okay.
It's like crap.
Good luck. You're in now, my friend. All right, that was a good time. Thanks to Dylan and Brent again for stopping by. This Friday, we're gonna have an episode coming out. Tommy and I talked to one Richard Froning Jr.
Hey.
So we'll have that for you on Friday, and then we will be back next week. Recorded an episode today of TEF Rewind with Carrie Pierce and Justin Kotler. That'll be out probably a week from Friday. That was really good. That got emotional. We did Atlanta, from 2020. So that'll be coming out too. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Appreciate you hanging out. Lauren, you got big plans? You traveling? You going?
No, I will be traveling 40 minutes to my sister's house.
Tremendous.
And I don't think I'm going to have room for pie because I'm still coming off the
chocolate high.
candy high. Yeah.
There we go. Well, just chase it with some tryptophan, man.
What's your go-to pie?
Anything with chocolate, like a chocolate mousse pie. Yeah. Oh, ironic.
Yeah.
Or pecan pie.
Ooh, pecan.
I'm a pumpkin guy for like apples.
You know, it's funny. I didn't used to be until I got older.
Yeah.
It's because
palate has changed.
Yeah, a little bit more of a savory element to it, and it's great for breakfast. But
what?
Oh yeah. Pumpkin pie for breakfast with your coffee.
That's
Huh.
a little whipped cream.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's a very acceptable holiday breakfast, Lauren.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you get to see the loved ones, spend quality time with them, and appreciate you hanging out with us. For Lauren Khalil and Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other. Be better. We'll talk to you guys next time. Happy Thanksgiving.